Hey everyone, my name is Taylor Smith, aka the Career Coach, and today I'm talking about SMART descriptions you would add to your resume. So you may have heard the acronym SMART before, used specifically for goal setting, but today we're going to use this same acronym and tweak it just a little bit to talk about how to create these detailed bullet point descriptions on your resume to really make you stand out to recruiters and get noticed. So if you want to learn more about this, make sure you keep on watching. But until then, again, I am a career coach and I help college students and professionals get noticed by recruiters, stand out as a top candidate, and get offers for paid internships and full-time opportunities. If any of that resonates with you, then you are in the correct place. So let's go ahead and get started with our video. So if you watched my video last week related to resume sections, you may have heard me talk about this in a little bit more detail, where I mentioned that you need to include these bullet point descriptions in specific sections within your resume. So of course, the number one is the professional experience section on your resume. You want to make sure that you're using these SMART descriptions, which we'll be talking about here soon, but also some other sections you probably want to follow the same format and include these SMART descriptions is your leadership section, any relevant projects, and also if you have anything listed for community service / volunteering. These are the main sections you want to make sure you're incorporating these bullet point descriptions in so that you can give more details to the recruiter about what it is exactly you did in each of these different positions, projects, and opportunities. All right, so you may be thinking to yourself, why are we doing bullet point descriptions and not paragraphs? So the reason for this is that paragraphs are a lot harder to kind of skim through and digest all of the information because the average recruiter only looks at your resume for about 5 to 6 seconds at initial glance. And if you grab their attention, then they're more likely to continue reading through your resume. So with that said, the bullet point descriptions make it a lot easier for a recruiter to actually skim through your resume and get the most important information. It also makes everything a little bit more digestible, so they're able to break up the information and determine, okay, this goes with that, this goes with this, and it's just a lot easier on the eyes for processing and understanding. So this is why you want to focus more on the bullet points rather than the paragraphs, which is much more of an outdated practice that was done a few decades ago. So let's break down what SMART actually means. So like we mentioned before, SMART is an acronym that's usually used for goal setting, but I decided to go ahead and apply it for resumes because I felt like it fits pretty well, specifically related to descriptions. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And we're about to break them all up one by one to talk about specifically why it's important for these bullet point descriptions you have on your resume. Alrighty, so the S in SMART is specific. So you want to make sure that you're painting a detailed picture to the reader so that they understand what exactly you did in this specific position. You also want to make sure that you're being very clear and concise, straight to the point on what it is that you're talking about, but you're also breaking it down into layman's terms. So this means that basically you're making it very clear to the reader what it is that you did, and you're not trying to go extremely too technical, because not only are subject matter experts or SMEs are going to be looking at your resumes, but usually it starts off with some kind of HR person and recruiter, and honestly they're not going to know all the technical aspects of your projects, and honestly they may not care. You need to be able to be somebody that can break things down so that anybody can understand what it is that you're talking about. And this is an important skill when you get the position as well that you will probably use day in and day out. So that's why it's important to make this very clear on your resume. So you want to try to avoid any jargon, which is basically any terminology that only a small set of people would know, and try to break these down into different words so that anybody can clearly understand what it is that you're talking about. If you have any acronyms, you probably just want to go ahead and spell them out, or you might as well just remove them and rephrase them in a different way so that anybody can understand what it is that you're talking about. In addition to this, you also want to be very clear on what the actual purpose or the why is for doing these different tasks or accomplishments on your resume. So you don't want to just talk about what you did, but you really want to emphasize and talk about why did you do this specific thing? Why was it so important? What was the impact it had on the overall business or within the specific team? Why did you do this, and why was it so important? All right, with all of that said, you want to make sure that you're still incorporating these key language words, these buzzwords, into your resume. So you want to focus on key terminology that's important to the actual position, important to this team, etc. Because there are certain things that they're looking for as far as skills, competencies, etc. And so a lot of this is actually posted in the job posting. So this is kind of a trick that you can use. You can look at this language and try to incorporate it into your resume. Of course, you don't want to copy and paste it. You want it to be fluid, and you want it to be something that you've actually done and you've completed. But these are things that you want to make sure that you're embedding into your bullet point descriptions, right? You want to avoid jargon, like I mentioned before, but you still want to make sure that you're still having these keywords that are universal, that people will really understand and know that you did, that was very significant and stands out to you. So the M in SMART stands for measurable. And here we're talking about numbers or metrics. So you need to make sure that 80 to 90% of your bullet point descriptions are incorporating some kind of metric in there. And I know this can be a little tricky, especially if you've been in a position that was years ago, maybe even a few months ago, and you can't remember the exact number that you worked with. That's okay. That's why we're going to estimate when possible, so that you can at least incorporate some kind of number in there. And the reason for this is that you want to give a clearer picture to the reader of what it is that you worked on exactly. And it also makes things a little bit more impressive and put things into perspective, so that they fully understand what is it that you worked on, how detailed or minuscule was it. And even if it wasn't, that way they understand what it is that you were working on. And at the end of the day, these companies care about the numbers, right? They care about the data. They care about the money. So whether that is related to revenue, the amount of money saved, this is related to the number of accounts that you manage, the number of customers that you supported, the number of teams that you led, the number of meetings that you led, the number of reductions you may have reduced, any time reductions, any savings, all of that. You can get very creative here. They want to understand the numbers because the data doesn't lie, and this is important to them. This is part of painting that picture to the reader, and I guarantee you that doing this alone is going to already make you stand out, because so many people are not taking advantage of this and incorporating these metrics and these numbers into your resume. So doing this is going to automatically go ahead and make you stand out, but you still want to make sure that you're following everything else within this SMART model when you're creating these bullet point descriptions. Also, think of it this way: when you start the position, you're going to probably do some presentations every now and then, or you're going to have to do some kind of report out, or you're also just going to have to just tell people what's been going on. And people are always going to care about the data there as well. So you might as well start incorporating this stuff into your resume and get some good practice, so that when people ask you for updates, when people are asking for information, it's already a habit of yours to collect some kind of information or estimate, so that you can give this to people to paint a larger and better story, because data does tell some kind of story to different readers and different people, and that's why data is important. So the A in SMART stands for attainable, but we're going to tweak it here to talk about your achievements and to be accountable. So when I talk about being accountable, I want you to focus more on your personal contributions and not necessarily the team or a project that you may have worked on. So, you may have worked on a team, and it's very easy to fall into we did this. We accomplished this. This is what we worked on together. But at the end of the day, the company is looking to hire you as an individual, not that team. So this is your one time to be selfish and really focus on the things that you did. Similarly, this can translate into your interview as well. So here you want to take ownership of the things that you did as a team, right? And that's okay, because you guys worked on it all together. So it's okay for you to take this ownership here and talk about that. But also similarly, if you don't feel comfortable talking about something specifically that the team did and you can't really speak to it, and that's something that you just didn't really participate towards, then maybe that's something you don't really list on your resume or go into too much detail, because anything you list on your resume is game for an interview question. So if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, you can go ahead and remove it, and instead focus more on the things that you personally did and contributed to the team. In addition to that, I want you to focus on your achievements. Don't just talk about the daily tasks you did day in and day out. You want to focus on the top achievements and accomplishments you had. Even if it may have been a minor project that you may have worked on just a couple days, or maybe even a few months, this may be a huge project that had a great impact and benefit on everybody else, and creating new processes and streamlining things. And even though it may have been very minor to the magnitude of other things that you do, it may have been extremely critical. So make sure that you're also highlighting these things and incorporating them into your resume to talk about these top accomplishments as well, and what was the impact, like we mentioned before, on how it benefited the organization or team. So the R in SMART stands for realistic, but we're going to add a little razzle dazzle on it, and we're also going to incorporate relevancy. So first and foremost, you want to be very realistic with the information you put in these bullet point descriptions. So like I mentioned before with the metrics, you don't want to underestimate the things that you did, but you also don't want to overestimate and fluff up your numbers. For example, you don't want to say that you saved the company millions of dollars when in actuality you only saved a few hundred. But I want you to be proud of that few hundred that you saved, right? So for example, I had an internship that was only a few months long, and I was able to save about $800 for the company. At first, I was a little embarrassed by that. I didn't want to include that on my resume because people save thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of dollars all the time. And I was like, honestly, that's just not that remarkable and it's not that impressive. But however, the more detail that I put into my resume, put it all into perspective. So like I said, it was only a couple months long. In addition to that, I was buying screws and different fasteners like nuts, bolts, etc. So I mean, me saving a few $100s is actually pretty impressive for the types of things that I was purchasing. And in addition to that, if I add a percentage in there and say that I saved about 20% inflation, then that puts things into more perspective and is even more impressive. So this is why it's important to incorporate all this detail and specifics into your resume along with the metrics. But just to reiterate, as far as the magnitude and possibly lying on your resume and over fluffing things, remember that people can fact check you, right? They can potentially reach out to your contacts that you have for references and double check and see, hey, did this person actually achieve this? Especially if it's within the same company, still they can reach out to the manager and ask if this is legit. Maybe they may not go out of their way to do that, or they may not have a contact in order to do that, but they may call you out on your BS and just not accept it, or maybe even ask you a question during an interview, which will then be quite embarrassing, right? Because now you're trying to talk about this and you're trying to justify it, and it could just get a little bit uncomfortable and uneasy. So again, don't add anything to your resume that you don't feel comfortable talking about. However, I do challenge you to add these accurate numbers, and if someone were to ask you about it for more details, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're calling you out on BS. It could be that they really truly just want to get more information and understand. So that's why in the back of your mind, you need to have a little bit of data or information that's not included on your resume so that you can justify it and you can speak to everything that you already have listed. And then lastly, the relevancy. So I want you to make sure that you're incorporating these key words into your resume like we mentioned beforehand. So you want to try to translate or place things into different words that are more important to the company. So for example, if you may work in retail, instead of just saying that you folded clothes, you can say that you standardize different articles of clothing, maybe 1,400 pieces of clothing a day, and you categorize them by shape, color, and size to improve the customer experience. So these are some different things that you can do to tie in and relate to things that companies care about, because not only does the retail business care about standardization, but that's also a key word that's used in engineering and possibly other tech fields as well. So trying to find these different key words that you can incorporate into your resume to make you stand out. And next we have T in SMART, which stands for time bound. So make sure here you're talking about the frequency of specific tasks you may have completed. So is this on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, annually, or is this a total summation? You want to make sure that you're very clear on this specifically on your resume. In addition to that, you also need to make sure that you're specifying the duration that you were in a specific role. So this is more formatting related, but you were in a specific position from month year to month year. If you want to learn more about formatting, make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss next week's video, where I'm going to talk more about the different formatting as far as how to put that month year on your resume, as well as being consistent and other little tips and tricks as far as formatting if you may be running out of space and want to maximize on that by maybe modifying your margins and a few other little tips and tricks. So make sure that you guys stay tuned so that you don't miss that video. Alrighty guys, so I want to share a couple examples with y'all. I know I shared one earlier where I talked about instead of folding clothes, you could say that you standardize different articles of clothing by color, size, and style. But here's a couple more examples for y'all. So the first one, instead of saying that you worked at a cash register, you can say that you managed $2,500 cash daily, confirming a three-way match each closing shift to the system and manager's count. And here's another example. Let's say you're some kind of secretary of an organization. Instead of just saying that you sent emails, you can say you streamline communication to 300 plus members with 25 weekly emails regarding events, scholarships, and internships. And let's say you may have some kind of internships that you completed. An example you could use here, instead of just saying that you updated some customer delivery notes, let's say instead that you updated 150 customer accounts for 35 sales representatives to improve customer delivery services. So you can see the differences between each, right? One is very vague, not a lot of information, doesn't really sound that impressive. But then when I add all of the details in there, when I add in all of the different metrics, that's when it really comes to life and it paints a different picture to the reader. So that's why it's important to follow this SMART model in order to make you have very impressive SMART bullet point descriptions. Alrighty y'all, well that's it for this video. I hope that you guys liked it and you learned something new. If you did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to stay connected with me or visit my website, I'll put all of that information in the description box below. And if you want to learn more from me, learn more about different resume techniques, learn about different career readiness, prep tips and tricks, or if you want to learn about different career paths related to engineering, supply chain, and more, make sure to check out the other videos on my channel. But until then, you guys, y'all take care and happy job hunting.